Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a fascinating 38-page training manual originally designed by a government health ministry to completely transform how healthcare providers interact with their communities. But, here's the real secret. The principles tucked inside this document are actually a masterclass in human connection. They apply to absolutely all of us, no matter what line of work you're in. So, let's dive right into this. Think about your own everyday life for a second. When you walk into a bank or a supermarket or maybe even a mechanic's shop, how do you expect to be treated? You want to be heard, respected, and treated as an individual, right? Now, what happens when those expectations aren't met? You get frustrated, you feel ignored, and honestly, you probably take your business somewhere else. This perfectly grounds our topic today, because at its core, every single professional interaction is a deeply human interaction. All right, let's jump into Section 1, the client-centered mindset. Any good interaction starts with the visible tip of our behavior, and that is entirely dictated by how we view the person sitting right across from us. A true client-centered approach means you're putting the other person in the driver's seat. It's not just about politely handing someone what they want. It's about fundamentally seeing them as an equal partner. You have to remember they are the true experts on their own bodies, their own desires, and their own unique life circumstances. We're just working alongside them as co-pilots to help them get the absolute best outcome. And listen, the stakes here are incredibly high. When we genuinely use a client-centered approach, we build massive trust, we satisfy real needs, and people actually follow through with our advice. But on the flip side, failing to center the client doesn't just bruise some egos. It literally wastes resources, decreases safety, and can even lead to serious legal culpability. Poor communication has very real, very tangible costs. Moving right along to Section 2, Interpersonal Communication Essentials. Effective communication actually acts a lot like a time machine. We can clearly see how it pays off across time for everyone involved. Just think about it. In the short term, you get a highly accurate picture of a problem, simply because the person feels comfortable enough to open up and share. In the medium term, that saves you time and creates way better adherence to whatever solution you come up with. And looking at the long term, it creates a healthier population and less overall workload for the system. Doing the hard work of communicating well up front saves everyone an incredible amount of time and energy down the road. So, how do we actually pull this off? Well, the manual outlines 5 key elements of effective interpersonal communication, but there's one that is absolutely crucial, and that's bridging social class distance. Look, social gaps naturally pop up from differences in education, economic status, or even age. But we have to actively bridge those gaps. We do that through radical honesty and by creating a genuinely caring atmosphere where mutual respect can actually thrive. But remember, the words you use are just the beginning. They really only express a fraction of your actual message. Your tone, your attitude, and your ability to avoid distractions, those convey the rest. It sounds so simple, but if you're checking your cell phone, glancing at a computer screen, or doodling while someone is talking to you, you're broadcasting a loud, negative message. Undivided, physical attention is what truly puts people at ease. Which brings us to Section 3, the Gather Counseling Method. The Gather framework is a brilliant step-by-step method designed to help someone make a fully informed decision. It goes like this. You greet them politely. You ask them how they feel, you tell them their choices, you help them understand, you explain the instructions, and you return for follow-up. I really want to highlight step 4 here, help. Assisting someone in understanding their options without making the decision for them is so vital. In a truly empathetic interaction, you're a guide, not a dictator. You empower them to choose. And during that explain step, bringing in visual aids is an absolute game changer. They completely reduce information overload, they capture interest, and they help people remember complex information long after the conversation is over. Visuals naturally spark discussion and make even the most complicated, jargon-heavy topics remarkably easy to comprehend. Let's dive a bit deeper now in Section 4, the empathy iceberg. We're moving past the structural mechanics of communication now and diving into the actual psychology of true human connection. I want you to think of empathy like an iceberg. Interpersonal communication skills, those are just the visible tip above the water. You could memorize and practice all the gather steps in the world, but if they aren't rooted in that massive, submerged base, a sincere character, and a genuine desire to understand the other person, they'll completely fall flat. The skills literally have to stem from real sincerity. Which leads us to this, the absolute core mantra of this entire training manual. Seek first to understand. There are so many things in life and in professional settings that are completely outside of our control. We can't fix everything, but we can always choose to seek understanding first before we judge and long before we rush to give advice. To successfully pull that off, though, we have to take a hard look at our own biases. Our personal values are deeply shaped by our family, religion, gender norms, and life experiences. True empathy requires us to respect someone else's values, even when they directly contradict our own. We absolutely have to avoid imposing our personal worldview on others. It's the only real way to build lasting trust. And finally, Section 5, Levels of True Listening. The ultimate tool for empathy and understanding isn't talking at all. It's listening. Stephen Covey actually outlines 5 levels of listening, and I want you to playfully reflect on this for a second. Which level do you usually default to with your colleagues or even your family at the dinner table? Are you stuck down at level 2, just pretending to listen with a yeah, sure? Or maybe level 3, selectively hearing only the parts that interest you? Our goal is to climb all the way up that ladder to level 5, empathic listening. So, how do we actually reach that elusive 5th level? Well, you might start by mimicking or rephrasing the content of what they're saying, but the absolute magic happens at stage 4. You have to rephrase the content and reflect the feeling. You're combining the pure logic of what someone is saying with the raw emotion of how they are feeling about it. When you can say, wow, it sounds like you're really frustrated about how things are going, you make them feel truly seen and understood. Which leaves us with this final, incredibly provocative self-assessment question straight from the manual. How much silence can you expect to find each day? Because silence isn't just an absence of noise, right? It provides the necessary context and space for all sound. If you really want to master empathic listening and truly hear others, you have to cultivate silence in your own life first. Thank you so much for exploring this fascinating material with me, and I challenge you to go find just a few minutes of golden silence today.